Hi folks, I'm here with Bennet Ratcliff and we're going to learn about who he is, what he's done, and his vision for Woodstock. Thank you for agreeing to join me.
Of course,
Yeah.
thank you very much for asking.
You were, you spent the day, you were at the Corollas court thing.
Actually, I was in Ulster County court today, and I listened to some of the pretrial hearing, Joe Corollas, in the homicide case that he is, alleged to have killed and beaten to death Mickey Myers, and it was a really rough afternoon to, listen to the lawyers go back and forth about what should be admitted, what shouldn't be admitted, and in the end, the judge is now deciding whether or not Corollas can get out on bail while the trial is still pending.
Okay, but his DEC, he's got to answer to his DEC charges on the 20th, is it?
In fact, on the 20th, there's another trial about a different problem that Joe Corollas has, and that is that 29 trucks carrying construction and demolition material dumped in Saugerties, and then some of that was moved to Woodstock.
Yeah, I actually did the math on that because it was 200 triaxle trucks and CMD material. They say it weighs approximately 30 tons. So that's, if you do the math on it, that's 6,000 tons.
We used to drive by the Corollas site, and the mountain just got higher and higher and higher, and it was really frightening.
And why did it take so long for the DEC to step in?
Listen, it's unclear why the DEC took a long time to step in there, and they're not stepping in Woodstock either.
Right.
But the good part about Woodstock is Woodstock's laws actually say that we don't need the DEC.
Right.
We can clean that up ourselves.
Right.
Our laws are stricter than the DEC's.
Correct.
Which is fantastic, because that means we protect the environment better than anyone in New York State.
Yeah.
But we have to enforce those laws. And right now, the supervisor's not enforcing the law. In fact, he's in court spending taxpayer dollars to keep the dump right there.
It's insane, isn't it? I can't figure it out. The only explanation is not very flattering.
Listen, I don't know why it's happening. I just know what is happening. And what is happening is that there is contaminated debris sitting over the aquifer. Right. It is an illegal dump. Right. It's against Woodstock's laws. Right. And we could go on that property and take it away right now. Right. And bill the property owner back for the cost. Okay. So we wouldn't be out a single penny. But the supervisor doesn't want to do that. Instead, he wants to fight in court to keep it there.
Pretty nutty,
I don't know why somebody would fight to protect a polluter.
It makes no sense.
It doesn't make sense to me.
No.
In the Corollas trial today, in this pre-trial hearing, the Corollas attorney said, "You got to let him out on bail. He needs to get back to doing his business."
His business?
And that was really frightening.
Yeah, that is frightening.
It really was frightening to hear that Joe Corollas could be out doing business again, dumping in Woodstock and Saugerties and other places. Mm-hmm. It's possibly going to happen, but all of those things aside.
Should we write letters to the judge? What do you do?
I actually think the thing that we need to do is we need to get out and vote. There is one person who is standing in the way of cleaning up Woodstock, and that's Bill McKenna. Right. If we can get Bill McKenna out of the picture, then we can begin to enforce our own laws and clean up Woodstock. Okay. I mean, to me, it's just a really simple solution. Right. Of course, you could write letters to the judge, but the judge is going to make a determination about what's fair and what isn't fair, what one lawyer has said and what another lawyer hasn't said. The judge is going to rule on issues of law. What we need to do is we need to enforce our own laws. Right. So
Yes, I agree 100%.
It's a really tough situation.
Can you speak about the other lawsuit that's against the town right now? That one, I'm just learning about this. It's just making me sick.
Well, the 4 police officers and a dispatcher have filed an EEOC complaint against Bill McKenna and an officer and the chief, and they are alleging that the officer has engaged in misogyny, racism, created a hostile work environment, and that there's been retaliation against the officers who have reported it.
Right.
And right now, that officer is on paid administrative leave. Instead of being fired, instead of losing his job, we are paying him to sit out while these things are being discussed.
And I understand that McKenna did his own investigation.
So he did an investigation. He sat in on the appeal of his investigation, which is crazy. It's kind of like he did an investigation and the person said, I don't like the findings, I'd like to appeal. And he said, oh, I'll sit in on the appeal also of his own investigation. I mean, the lawyers don't believe that it's a good idea to allow the supervisor to investigate, but the town law allows it to happen. And so this kind of conflict of interest happens. And it happens because our laws need to be tightened. Look, I believe deep in my heart we need to reform many of Woodstock's laws as it pertains to our workplace. I believe that the workplace laws are not strong enough. If you have a complaint, there is no real way for you to get that complaint forward.
Okay.
It all goes through the supervisor. And that just is not a good way for sexual harassment or racism claims. You know, the Woodstock Human Rights Commission chair came before the town board yesterday, and he said, we do not have a confidential email for our complaints, and we do not have anywhere to put our confidential documents.
Right.
So when somebody makes a confidential complaint to the Woodstock Human Rights Commission, that complaint is actually not confidential because the email and the password are kept in the supervisor's office. Yeah, I don't know what to say other than it's easy to change those things.
Right.
But
what about the ethics board? I was trying to learn about what's going on. They're supposed to have 5 members. They have 4. They're supposed to meet like a minimum of 2 times a year, but also as needed. I guess they're all volunteers. What is their role to help in this?
Well, the ethics board only has a narrow purview, and most of what the ethics board can and does review is financial impropriety. And so the ethics board is a group of well-intentioned individuals who really follow the law that they are empowered by, but the law that empowers them really ties their hands in 3 or 4 ways. Let me give you an example. The task forces that get created don't have to comply with the ethics laws because in our law, town law, it says they don't have to. Only committees or commissions do. And a task force means that you could put 5 or 6 people who have conflicts of interest on a, let's say, housing oversight task force.
The zoning board?
And they could, well, no, not the zoning board, but on the housing oversight task force. Okay. And they don't have to give their financial disclosures to the ethics board.
Okay.
They are not part.
No transparency.
No transparency.
Okay.
Yeah. There are a number of simple changes that we could make. We could have more transparency. We could have an ethics board that has a larger purview. We could have a sexual harassment training that is done by independent third parties. We could have a better workplace with stricter workplace environment rules that allow people to understand when they are in a hostile workplace what to do. Right now, some people can't even download a form online because the website doesn't work. It's terrible. It's like then you have to go to the supervisor's office or the town clerk and ask for the forms. And if it involves somebody there, well, then, it's difficult for people to feel like they're going to have confidentiality or that they're going to have independence.
Yeah. Now, I want to get into talking about all the great experience that you've had, but let's talk a little bit about Woodstock National LLC. You see the signs from one end of town to the other. Nobody wants it.
You say nobody wants it, but
a lot of people, my friends, we certainly don't want it.
That's just not true.
Okay.
Right? And that is the problem. I certainly don't want it. And I believe that 600 plus acres should be a park. There is one small parcel of land that separates the Woodstock National parcels from the Bluestone Wild Forest.
Right.
And we need to work with the Open Space Institute, New York State, or some other philanthropic organization to purchase with the town this land and extend the Bluestone Wild Forest. This is a pristine, intact, wetlands and forest. It is a foraging area for the local bald eagles, and this can and should be protected.
And it was just after it just got designated as it a critical environmental area?
That's right.
Yeah. So it's got vernal pools and box turtles and special flora and fauna, and we don't want roads in that. We don't want people like Carolus being able to drive on the asphalt and dump near the Sawkill.
Well, exactly. Look, we should protect this land just like some of the other land is protected around us. If people want to build luxury homes, there are plenty of other places that they could build luxury homes. A 600-acre intact area in the critical environmental area is not a place for luxury homes, affordable housing, golf courses, helipads, roads.
Right.
It's not a place for us to destroy. I mean,
I noticed that the developers just got they wanted a 30-day extension. It looks like they're trying to reach out to investors. It doesn't really look like they're launching this new crowdfunding platform, which is very questionable. It doesn't look to me like things are going very well for them.
Look, these are professional developers. They have professional interests in development and have for years. And like many other developers, they see Woodstock as a gold mine.
Right.
And
WeWork, the one guy, Evan Kleinberg, I think is his name. He was the head of WeWork Asia, and now there's investors in Hong Kong that are suing WeWork because things were not represented, honestly.
I don't know what WeWork has or hasn't done. I do know that what works in that area is not WeWork development. It's not 100 luxury homes. It's not 50 luxury homes. Look, it's a luxurious home to foxes and bats and other beautiful animals. It's a luxurious place for newts and turtles. It's a place that we should preserve and protect.
They're talking about putting a sewage treatment plant on the Sawkill. Just say in your dreams. I can't imagine that this could possibly be allowed to happen, but we don't know what kind of encouragement they might be getting.
One of the things that the proposal has is it has a private sewage treatment facility, which includes things like a grinder, which grinds up the sewage so that it can be turned into some sort of affluent, or it can be used to truck off somewhere. And to place it next to the Sawkill, I think is to place it anywhere. We do not need a private sewage treatment facility, in the critical environmental area.
Right.
So
let's talk about affordable housing.
Affordable housing is and has been a problem in Woodstock for years. And it is a shame that we do not do something about it immediately. We should have done something 5 years ago. We should have done something 3 years ago. And we can do something now. The town owns land. It is on the water and on the sewer lines. And these places where the town owns the land could be developed by RUPCO.
RUPCO, right.
Right. RUPCO, has developed in Woodstock in the past and could come back if there was somebody, a leader, who would say, we welcome you and we want to work with you.
Right.
We have
What about the old funeral home that Lizzie Van bought? I know there was a field back there. People were upset about things possibly being built on a field, but I'm thinking now, as much as I love fields and bluebirds and everything, people need to live too. Maybe that would be a spot.
Look, the field is privately owned.
Oh, okay.
There is a piece of land that is owned by the town that is a parking lot. Right now, it's a parking lot. It has the water and the sewer hookups are right there. And people are like, oh, but we need parking. We need affordable housing too. And if it's about cars or people, I'm gonna be choosing the people. And so I think that what we ought to do is look at the parking area behind Family and adjacent to Colony as a place for affordable housing.
Mm-hmm.
And
you would still have some parking there.
I believe that we can expand the parking in the Magic Mountain parking area there. I think that is a real solution.
Right.
I mean, we have a parking area right off of Tinker Street, by the apothecary, behind the.
Oh, that's true.
We have
by the town offices. There's
exactly.
Parking. Yeah.
There's the parking lot is underutilized across from Colony as well. We need better signage for our parking. We need sidewalks that go to and from, and that are not just built, but that are then maintained and repaired. I mean, what if we really want affordable housing? It's part of a holistic approach. We can't just say, now let's go chop down a bunch of trees, knock down some forests, and put it over there. We have a parking lot that is usable land. We need to explore that. There's.
So I noticed that there was somebody who did some kind of mock-up drawing saying that they represented it as like some big boxy apartment building. I don't know. They made it look really as bad as they could. Can you talk about that?
That's first and foremost disinformation.
Okay.
Right? I'm not proposing an eyesore in the middle of town.
Right. You want something harmonious with
It could be small townhouses built around a grassy courtyard. It could be family homes, built in row house style, with a mews. All of these things could be. If I was an architect, I would want to show off my talents to the world by building affordable housing in Woodstock.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I thought Brad Will did a nice job on, what did they call that? Woodstock Commons? No. The back behind the bank there.
Yeah, there are affordable housing units that live harmoniously with Woodstock. And I don't know why somebody decided they would try to deceive people and say, oh yeah, look, it's going to be a 4-story. It's not going to be a 4-story
you're a smart
anything.
guy. Let me just say,
Yeah.
I looked into just a little bit. You were valedictorian of your high school class.
I was.
Yeah. What was your high school?
Oh my gosh, I went to El Dorado High School in El Dorado, Arkansas. My mother was a typing teacher. I lived across the street from the high school. I used to walk to class and then walk home every day. It was a small town of about 15,000 people.
Okay, so the reason you were valedictorian, was that because you had a supportive family, or what? Why do you think you were able to achieve that?
I was always curious, and my parents always encouraged me to ask questions. And I would ask questions, and I would get information, and I would put that information together, and I carry that with me. Okay. I mean, I really do.
And so then you went to Princeton.
So I went to Princeton University, and I graduated after 4 years.
Magna cum laude.
I graduated magna cum laude. I graduated in politics and European cultural studies. I wrote a thesis about Samuel Beckett and the way that language embeds meaning, cultural meaning in words. Mm-hmm. And then I went and studied in France for a year on a Rotary Foundation fellowship. It was great. I was able to study French language and culture. I wrote about 15 short stories as well. It was a really a magic time for me right after college. I returned to the United States and began working in the Dukakis-Benson campaign to try to elect Michael Dukakis.
Right.
Yeah, it was not successful. I worked in the field in rural Arkansas. I delivered yard signs. I printed brochures. I did phone banks. I was in charge of organizing about a third of the state of Arkansas. And we did a good job for Dukakis, but he didn't win. Okay. And so I moved to Washington, D.C. and, began my career there. Mm-hmm. So the first thing that I did was I got a job working in the Sergeant-at-Arms office at the United States Senate. My job was, when they rang the bell and started a Senate session, I went into the Sergeant-at-Arms office. He gave me a key. I went and opened a small door. I walked up into the attic of the United States Senate. I opened up another trap door and walked out onto the roof. And I raised the U.S. flag up above the Senate chamber.
And that was your job?
No. When they pressed the button to end the session, I had to do it all back in reverse and take the flag down.
Okay.
So there were two jobs.
Okay.
But in the meantime, what I did was I went over to the Library of Congress and I started reading. And I found out where all the votes are and where all the disclosure forms are and how laws are made and how the Congress works. And I became a political consultant, mm-hmm. helping elect Democrats for 2.5 decades in Washington, D.C.
Wow.
Yeah, it was again another magic time. It really was.
Now you were working with the Clinton administration at one point?
So I worked on Bill Clinton's 92 campaign, and again on his 96 campaign. I wrote radio spots. I wrote television ads. I wrote the first internet ads and received what was called a Polly. It's the Political Consulting Award for Internet Advertising. It was in 1999. It was the first internet political ads that were produced.
So I know you had a terrible personal tragedy that brought you out of that, and you were widowed and had to raise your 3 children yourself.
So we moved, my family and I moved to Los Angeles after George Bush beat Al Gore. And I began working internationally. And I began advising different international clients in places like Mexico, in places like, His Holiness the Dalai Lama of Tibet, in places like Colombia, the president there who was battling a 50-year cartel and guerrilla rebels who were bombing their country. And my work was to try to diffuse these kind of crises, to try to find ways that I could bring sides together. Unfortunately, while I was involved in this, my wife, who was soon to be my ex-wife, was killed in a tragic accident, and I could no longer pursue that kind of work. I had 3 children to raise. They were 7 and 9 and 11, and it was a difficult time for all of us. The driver who killed my wife was, out of control and speeding. It was noon. They executed a high-speed U-turn, and almost with no warning, standing beside her vehicle, my wife was killed. And the kids were at school, and I was halfway around the world. And in moments like that, it crystallizes for you what you should be doing with your life. And for me, it was no longer dealing with international crises. It was no longer trying to bring together, solutions for international dilemmas. It was to hold my family together and to repair what was a traumatic moment that would forever change all of us. And we chose to move to Woodstock. It was a healing place. It was a place of kindness and community, and I felt that it would be best for all of us to do that. And so I retired from my life as a political consultant.
Mm-hmm. And then you became, you got involved, you were on the Ontario School Board, was it?
So after moving up here in 2015, there was an opening on the Ontario School Board, an appointment. And I had volunteered for a committee on the school board, and so I threw my name in for the appointment, and I got it. Mm-hmm. And then like one of the very first votes that I had to make was, should we keep the racist mascot or not? And I was like, no, of course not. It was for me instructive because it was a very difficult vote for some people, but for me it was not. I mean, I just don't think that racism has a place in the schools or anywhere for that matter. And I then spent the next 6 years working on the school board.
My friend Kevin Salem.
Yes, I've worked with Kevin.
I knew him through the music business. He's wonderful.
Kevin was great. Kevin was the president of the school board while I was there. I think greatly of Kevin. He was a tremendous leader. He was one of the leaders that brought the resolution forward to change the mascot to the eagle. And I think that it was a very difficult period for some people, and I think that through Kevin's leadership and some others, we were able to help everybody to understand that, during times of trauma or during times of real difference, you can find paths forward. And I think that's what we need to do right now here in Woodstock.
And let's talk some more, like a few more Woodstock issues. Don't mean to interrupt. Let's talk about the arts in Woodstock and your...
Well, I believe that, 100 years ago, a group of people came, bought up a bunch of farmland, and started building tiny houses on it, and invited all of their friends to come up. Now, today we would be screaming, "Stop the newcomers." But 100 years ago, that was the beginning of the Birdcliff colony. I think we need to look and understand, like, why did the people at the time accept all of those newcomers? What did they do with the newcomers that helped strengthen and build an arts community? And I think that part of what they did was they found a common ground. I think that what we need to do is find that common ground. The town of Woodstock should promote the community of the arts. There are artists who live here who are just getting by. There are artists who have left who would like to come back. We need to reopen our doors to those neighbors who have left, who were artists. And there are plenty of ways to do that. It's supporting them by finding affordable housing. It's supporting them by using their services. It's supporting, we need a registry of artists. I believe we need a commission of the arts.
I think that's a great idea.
I
I know my friend Paul McMahon would love to help you with that.
The city of Kingston got a grant to look at their arts economy and determine what to do. And there were 78 actionable items that this grant came up with. And the first one was start an arts commission. The second one was get a grant writer. The third one was start building the arts economy. And you know, that's what happened when the Center for Photography in Woodstock left. They're now in a beautiful building, and I encourage everybody to go there because it shows exactly how powerful this idea is. Woodstock had to lose something, Kingston gained it, but we can learn. And we're different than Kingston. We have a much longer history of artists. And there are so many, the Birdcliff Arts Colony is about to have a huge show where all sorts of artists come together and people from the town come and purchase those pieces. And we need to.
We always put a piece in the 5x7.
It's one of the most amazing things. Last week
it was fun.
I was there, and I sat for a portrait with an artist who was doing free commissions, and you had to bring a piece of recyclable or reusable material, and then they would create something on it. And I took an old laptop that was no longer working, and I said, please paint something on the screen here.
Oh, nice.
And we talked about the fish that live up in Mink Hollow.
Oh, yes.
And I said, look, what if you were to paint, instead of a portrait of, that mug, why don't you paint a fish?
You've spent a fair amount of time in that stream, I gather.
Listen, I'm more of a fish watcher than I am a fish catcher. And these are native brook trout.
Right.
These are
and
trout.
They don't tolerate dirty water, by the way.
Well, listen.
If brook trout are there, the water's clean.
If you can see the trout in the water, you know that it's clean. But they're getting higher and higher, meaning that they're running farther and farther away. And when you get to the top, it's just a spring coming out of the water. And that's when they are not going to exist anymore. It's a real problem that we have. The Esopus used to be filled with native brook trout. Now it's mainly filled with brown and rainbow trout, which were imported.
Right.
I mean, our water is a resource, and look, the water attracted the Hudson River School painters. They painted and they fished and they lived.
Getting back to the arts for a second,
Yeah.
I want to involve the Thomas Cole people more in Woodstock. There's such a connection there. And then to also connect with the in Onteora.
Exactly.
There are all these fascinating characters from days gone by, like Mark Twain and different people that were.
There was a man who lived off of Mink Hollow, whose name was Jose Juan Tablada. He was the cultural ambassador from Mexico during the 20s and 30s. He was friends with Gertrude Vanderbilt Whitney. He was the man who brought Rivera, Siqueiros, and Orozco, the great muralists, to the United States. He lived in Woodstock.
Right.
He gave his property to his nephew, and his nephew gave his mother's papers to the National Institute in Mexico City. And they talk about how beautiful Woodstock was. Mm-hmm. They talk about living up there in the mountains off of Mink Hollow. Mm-hmm. We need to keep those historical strands of these, and maybe we'll find out that Kahlo and Rivera actually came up here. You know, it's a possibility.
You notice there's a sign, I think it was Elias Hasbrook. That's my part of my family. I'm a Hasbrook.
Oh, wow.
And a Schoonmaker, and I have roots in the Hudson Valley that go way back. I traced it back to, I'm related to a prominent lawyer who was practicing in New Amsterdam before it was New York. So I'm a native New Yorker, which is why I will tell anybody off in a New York minute.
We've got some questions about what you did to the native people.
Oh, well, yeah.
So listen, that trail that people used to go up Mink Hollow was a Munsee trail that they used to trade with the Mohawk who lived on the plains over in Greene County. Mm-hmm. That was the original center of Woodstock, where that Elias Hasbrook sign is. That used to be the center of town.
Wow,
it's
interesting.
So wild. And then the Dutch took over that trail, and then the colonists did, and they used it. They were making bread up in the Mohawk Valley and secreting it through this trail during the Revolution.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
so cool.
It's so cool.
So we could talk about history.
We could talk about that forever.
For a long time, because I'm fascinated by it. Let's get to something more boring, which is how about the aspect of fiscal responsibility that,
I think that one of the things that we need is we need more transparency in our budgets. Like right now, we have $614,000 in unexpended fund balance. Our fund balance regularly has hundreds of thousands of dollars. We tax too much, we don't budget correctly, and we do not plan fiscally. I think that every quarter we need to have some sort of, here's how much money we're bringing in. Let people know. It's like there's not enough transparency. You know, what I would like to see is the budget's, it edges up. It's about $10 million. But also the unexpended fund balance continues to slosh around, and it gets used in ways that the average person just doesn't know about. Mm-hmm. I don't think that that's correct. I think that a budget isn't about numbers. A budget is about priorities. And when I was on the Onteora school budget, the annual budget was over $50 million. And I think that the priorities that we made there were more social emotional learning, more use of the funds in the classrooms. I would like to see the town budget be reflective of the town's values. Mm-hmm. I mean, we're sitting on land that we could be using for affordable housing instead of spending ARP funds, giving them away to ventures that have no affordable housing experience. It's like we just need fiscal responsibility and transparency, and we need our priorities to be in order. And I think that my priorities would be that what we need to do is we need a Parks and Recreations department. We really do need to look at what we have in terms of our Camo, in terms of our playgrounds.
What happened with the building up there? The last time I was up there, I was kind of dismayed, I have to say.
Another lack of transparency. The building is being built. It has had change orders. The costs have gone up. Money has been used from sources that were not originally earmarked for that. There was a reed bed study that the New York State had earmarked money for our sewer system that got diverted to be used for building the new town offices. I don't think that that's right.
No.
These kinds of things, just their fundamental lack of budget transparency. I mean, there were hearings yesterday in which budget committees came forward with their budgets, and they said, we only get $100 or $200 or $0 for our volunteer committee. We have $2,000 worth of plans. We just need an annual line item budget. The CMO has not had a line item budget for, I don't know, 50, 60 years. I mean, not 50, 60 years, since 1980, 40. And this is not right. We have a surplus. It's waiting to be used. And instead of waiting to be used, we should be planning more carefully so that we can allocate that money annually, so that we can build ADA compliant trails, so that we can take down trees that are hazards, so that we can make the soccer field and the sledding hill more accessible to everyone. I mean, we have the money to do these things. We just need to plan to do it, and it starts by being transparent with our budgets.
And what about, I know you've mentioned some grants that we should be availing ourselves of. Could you talk about that a little bit?
This has been a point of contention for several years, and I don't understand why. We need to hire a grant writer. We need to hire somebody who is looking for
Professional
grants.
grant writer.
Yes. For instance, right now, there are grants that can be obtained to do water testing in small towns using federal dollars, but we need a grant writer to identify and then go after that and do the legwork and then do the writing and bring the different committees together. That's not going on. We are leaving money on the table. I helped write a grant for composting.
Right.
We didn't get the grant because the town didn't want to match the grant money, and the town did not authorize us to go after the grant.
I would think that would be very popular.
Well, I would think it would be popular too. The people that got the grant, their town was working with them on the grant. Their town had a grant writer, and their town committed to making a match. And I mean like $10,000. You know, what we really need is somebody to professionalize grant writing and go after different grants in different places. There's a lot of money in the current federal administration, in the Biden administration, that flows to municipalities for all sorts of things. There was money that was flowing to the county for park work that was federal dollars. Woodstock didn't apply for that. You know, I was on the town board. I never heard about it. I assumed the supervisor did and decided not to apply. 20 other communities got money for sidewalks, parks, recreation, you name it.
We missed out.
Yes. We need somebody who's doggedly looking at that.
Right.
You know, it's just it's not happening. But it can. These are not big ideas.
Yeah.
These are little ideas that require people just to focus.
Yeah.
And we need that kind of leadership.
Agreed. I want to backtrack for just a second and talk about your. You've been passionate about your environmental work. I noticed you had gone like anti-nuclear and fighting dams and fracking. And can you just talk a little bit about your?
So I was part of a group that stopped a high elevation dam that was going to be that was looking for siting over in Olive. And this high elevation dam was nothing more than a high elevation toilet. They would build a giant reservoir at the top of one of the mountains, and then they would build huge tunnels underneath, literally flush them and turn underground turbines. And that provides what they call green energy. Well, what it doesn't say is you have to destroy a section of the mountain and a valley in order to create this toilet bowl that you can flush. And that high elevation dam and pumping system was going to come either to Olive or to Shandaken. And I just thought, this is crazy.
Sounds just dreadful.
And it had to stop. And
you know how depressed people get in areas where there's been mountaintop removal?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not good for anybody.
Look, I think that we need to be real with ourselves. Like, some of the first strip mining that ever took place, we now think of wistfully as bluestone quarries, right? And some of the first denuding of natural environments in the forests, we now think of as the tanning industry. You know, it's like Woodstock has been time and time again, you know, taking advantage of its own resources in a way that is not good. We have learned over time to stop, but we haven't completely learned our lesson. And we all need to take responsibility for learning the lesson. That's why we need to clean up the water, protect the aquifer, you know, stop Woodstock National, you know, tell the glamping resorts that they can't come here because we want our wetlands,
and
which
you were
are
involved in that fight from day one.
Yeah, from day one, I told the folks who were trying to stop Terramore, there is something that can be done, and there was, and we put that pressure on, and I was glad to be a part of that. I came before the town years ago and said, Dan's camera is going to use fracked natural gas, and it's going to be pumping it into a giant facility near Newburgh. I know that we're not near Newburgh, but it's going to be coming our way, and it might be lighting some people here in Ulster County. We need to say no.
Right.
I mean, when are we gonna wise up? If we tell the people in Brazil that they need to stop cutting down the rainforests, we need to stop cutting down our rainforests. We need to stop fracking our gas. We need to practice the things that we tell other people they should do.
True. Agree. So thank you for that work.
Sure.
That's near and dear to my heart. I'm like, you know, Earth Mother kind of person, you know. And I understand you like to garden, so me too.
Well, one of the things that I love to do is I love to grow tomatoes.
Okay.
My brother and I went out and picked tomatoes several years ago near his home in Arkansas. We dried the seeds, and I take the seeds and also seeds from Hudson Valley Seed Library,
right.
and I grow all of our tomatoes from seeds. And guess
That's what Ian does too.
It is first of all, the soil here and the air here and the water here is so fantastic.
Yeah.
And things just grow almost magically. And we give away so many tomatoes to our friends. We grew Cherokee purple tomatoes this year.
Nice.
That were fantastic.
Yeah, I did a lot of canning. We grow heirloom tomatoes, and they're just out of sight. They're so good.
We can our tomatoes. My partner Jackie Callahan, who's the co-owner of the Golden Notebook.
Yes.
We can a lot of our tomatoes, and then, you know, come February we'll open up a can of tomatoes, and it'll be, you know, snow on the ground, and we'll be eating backyard tomatoes and having pasta.
I love turning on some music, making dinner, taking some tomatoes off the shelf. It's such a beautiful part of being up here.
We are very fortunate, and not everybody who lives up here is that fortunate, and I think that that's one of the things that we should all be aware of, which is, we need to look out for each other.
Yeah.
And Jackie and I give away some of our stuff, and I know that some of the people who are receiving it are thrilled to get it. And you know what? I know that the community that lives here has a really big heart.
Oh God, yes.
And I know that the soil and the air and the water has a big heart too. And it's doing its part. We have to do our part.
Right. So Bennet, what do you think? Did we cover enough stuff?
I hope so.
We've been going on for a while now.
Oh, one more.
Yeah. Okay.
Tuesday,
Yes.
November 7th.
Oh, there we go.
There you go. Tuesday, November 7th. Please get out and vote. You can vote for me for town supervisor. I also encourage you to take 2 other people and put new faces on the board. Linda Lover, Michael Veach. Let's make Woodstock the place that we all thought we wanted to live. Thanks for your support.